All right, so as I said, I discovered the theory of everything in 2013. In 2010. In 2013 is when I started to really put it out on Facebook and stuff. But I told my parents because I wanted my parents to help me. I wanted some support. I knew that I would need support. I discovered the theory of everything. But like I said, instead, my grandpa, when I first showed him when I went to Hawaii, my grandpa was like, "Oh, he thought I was developing a schizophrenia," but he later said he knew that I didn't have schizophrenia, but he thought that I was. At first, he was like, "Well, what you need to do is you need to work, and once you work, you'll strengthen your ego, and then you'll let go of the quadrumodal, and you'll not be schizophrenic." But so then he had me like digging holes in the backyard because he's like, "Yeah, when you work, this takes you outside of yourself, and this helps strengthen your ego." But my grandpa wanted that from the very beginning. Like, he wanted me to be independent of my parents. Because like I said, he didn't know he didn't know, first I discovered the theory of everything. And also that I was so good at basketball. He didn't know the shoot away messed up my shot. He thought there was a problem with me. And then, same thing with, so like when I went to, when I went to Hawaii in 2013, my mom wanted me to go to Kauai because she didn't believe the quadrumodal. She thought that I had schizophrenia, and I told my mom, I want to, can you help me go to graduate school? I graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology at UCSD. Can I go to graduate school? My mom was like, "You're just schizophrenic. You're just gonna waste your time. You need to go with your grandpa." My grandpa didn't believe the quadrumodal. My grandpa said the quadrumodal was bullshit. And my grandpa told my mom the only reason why he developed the quadrumodal is because he wants to be independent. Or he wants to be dependent, and he doesn't want to be independent. And because he has a fragile ego and he wants to stay dependent, he just made this up. So he didn't know that I actually discovered the theory of everything. So he's telling my mom to make me independent. And I'll just give like one example. When I was on Kauai, I had a game where I scored 40 points and stuff. But, the thing is, my grandpa didn't know. My grandpa still saw me shooting. My shot was still messed up because I hadn't really studied the videos. And I wanted to get videos of when I was younger. He doesn't know how much that would have helped my shot. His whole thing is, if you were just in the flow, you'd have a good shot. No, the shoot away messed up my shot. Well, if you were in the flow, even if you had the shoot away, it wouldn't have messed up your shot. Again, always victim blaming. Always doing that shit. So I started to hate my grandpa. So, and I knew that he looked down upon me. He didn't know how good I was. And I would have been huge at basketball if it wasn't for the shoot away machine. So my grandpa's telling me, we need to get a job, and then once you get a job, this will strengthen your ego, and then you can let go of the quadrumodal. That's the way he saw it. But I discovered the theory of everything. I didn't need to strengthen my ego and get a job and all that. And again, I thought he was just white supremacist. He was a big Ayn Rand fan. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, because you're a white supremacist. Ayn Rand people are white supremacists. They're like, and that's this whole thing of, well, you don't want to be dependent on anybody because then they resent you. He gets that from Ayn Rand. And you resent them. He gets that from Ayn Rand. And I always thought that was a white supremacist thing. So I was like, no, the reason why I want my mom and dad to help me is because I discovered the theory of everything. And it will help if I had a little support. And if I'm not forced to be independent like my grandpa was trying to do. I ended up getting a job painting houses with one of my teammates playing basketball. And then I went home. I went to my grandma and grandpa's place one time, and my grandpa thought I was skipping work. And my grandpa was like, "You need to work." And he's yelling in my face. So then we got in an argument, and that was the first time I went to jail because because he was in my face spitting at me. So I threw my spaghetti, and I tried to leave, and then he got in my way, and he's yelling at me. So I pushed him. And then he calls the police. He's like, "I'm going to put you in jail," like a dickhead. So he calls the police, and he has the police come. And then the police come. And then they take me, but then I ended up going to the courts, and the courts ended up dropping the whole thing. But my grandpa, his whole thing, he was like, he was, first off, he was like, "Oh yeah, well the Jews are parasites in Germany," and so I was like, yeah, this guy's just a white supremacist. He's just a Nazi. And then, so but then he's like, "Oh, you need to get a job, you need to work, you need to work hard, and then that's the flow. Once you start to be independent, then you're in the flow because you're not an LA enemy." So I remember, my grandma bailed me out when I first went to that jail thing. My grandma bailed me out, and my grandpa was there, and my mom was on the phone, and my mom was like, "Make him go to prison. I want him to be raped. Make him learn a lesson. I want him to be raped." And my grandpa's in the seat like, My grandpa really wanted me to go to prison too because he wanted me to learn that I needed to be independent. And it's like, no, dude, if you guys would have just helped me, I could have helped me get basketball videos. I could have been huge with the basketball. He doesn't realize that if I would have just studied the videos, which I did when I was playing with Compton College, I started studying the few videos I had. and I fixed my shot a lot. I got a lot better. But he's like, if they would have just helped me get basketball videos, I could have improved my game a lot with basketball, and I could have made music, because when I play basketball, I can make music all the time. But my grandpa's like, oh, you gotta make him independent, you gotta get a job. So then I told my grandpa, well, how about you guys help me, go to graduate school? First off, help me get the quadrant stuff out. He didn't believe it, or help me go to graduate school. And my grandpa was like, well, if you want to go to graduate school, then get a job. Get a job. And I'm like, well, how about mom and dad help me? I discovered a theory of everything. Can you guys help me go to graduate school? Can you help me? Well, no, you need to be independent. You still just want to be dependent on your parents. If you want to go to graduate school, then get a job. You can pay for your graduate school. You don't need your parents. So again, he's like, he's trying to make me independent, and now he says like, oh, I didn't try to make you independent. I didn't try to get your parents to throw you to the side, Ryan. It wasn't me. They misinterpreted me. No, he did. His whole like make Ryan independent thing. My mom and dad then were like, okay, well, let's not help him at all, like you're saying. Let's throw him to the side. That's a good thing. It'll make him independent, and that's a good thing. So, yeah, and then, so I remember I would talk to my grandpa, and my grandpa would be like, yeah, well, the Buddhists, they carry water. They carry jugs of water. And when they carry jugs of water, the reason why is just doing any type of work, it takes your mind off of yourself, and, it takes you out of your these rituals take you out of your impulses and take you out of your habits and take you out of your relationships that enslave you and confirm the ego self and confirm the self. And just like doing these rituals, like carrying water, that can be beneficial in helping people to get into the flow. So like, I understand that now. I understand what he's trying to say. But at the time, remember, I didn't understand what he meant by the flow. He was like, the flow is pure awareness. I thought he was talking about some meditative state. Now I understand is seeing things as they really are. And everything, and without the contamination of the ego. But at the time, he didn't explain things well. So I'm like, but again, I'm like, his whole thing is like, oh, work hard, and then you'll be in the flow. But then when I was reading the Bible, see, I wanted to, because I was like, okay, it's just a white supremacist all about like work hard. I remember one time there was this like white guy working on his house in Kauai when I was staying there in 2013. And my grandpa's like talking to him, and like almost like you could look into my grandpa's eyes. He's like, I love this white guy who's working on my house. So like, he was working so hard. He's like, and then he'd look at me and he'd be like, looking at me like, oh, you don't work hard. You're not in the flow. But he'd then look at the white guy and be like, So I was like, my grandpa's just a white supremacist. And that's when I was a communist leftist, and I wanted to race mix the white people. I was like, screw my grandpa. He's a German Nazi. And I hated the white people. And I was like, and my dad also is like, my dad was subscribing to that. And then like my Asian friend was like, dude, what's up with your dad and your grandpa? He's like, in Asian culture, we don't try to like make the kid independent and try to make him get a job. If you're rich, then you help the kid to go to graduate school and you help him to get a good job and you help with that type of stuff. And we don't do that in Asian culture. We don't just throw our kids to the side. Like, we help our kids so that they can be the best, so they can succeed and get good jobs and stuff like that and go to graduate school and stuff. And what's up with your grandpa and your parents? And I was like, yeah, I think that you're right. But my grandpa was like, no, make him independent, make him work it. And it wasn't just, my grandpa's like, work at Jamba Juice or something. And my mom was like, well, and this is a crazy thing. My mom's like, well, you can't because you're schizophrenic. You're not even going to be able to work at McDonald's. You're going to be on Social Security your whole life. So she's like, be independent. But then she's like, but also, no, just go to get Social Security. So it's like all this hypocrisy, all this crazy stuff going on. I wasn't even schizophrenic. I actually discovered the theory of everything. If they could have just listened to me, not been going crazy like, he's crazy, he's schizophrenic. Just help me get the stuff out. I discovered theory of everything. They lost control trying to make me independent and all this weird shit. And then they made things go crazy, So, yeah, it fucked things up so bad. So I'm trying to but yeah, what was I saying though? Oh yeah, like, so my grandpa's like, yeah, well, the Buddhists, they just carry water. So then I was like reading the Bible and I was trying to look at the Bible and try to make it communist because my grandpa was like anti-communist. He's like for Ayn Rand and stuff. And I was like, you're just a white supremacist. And I thought the communists were more for the people of color. So I wanted to be a communist. I want to say the Bible's communist and anti-white. So I would try to look for evidence in the Bible that it was anti-white and communist. So like one example was, like it was ironic because my grandpa's like, yeah, carrying water could be good. But then it had like Solomon having the Gentiles carry water. And as they were like building the temple and stuff, and he had the Gentiles doing all the work. And I was like, yeah, well, you white people are so into like working hard and doing the work like my grandpa, like, oh, just carry water and work hard. But I was like, but the Bible talks about that the Gentiles will be servants to the Jews. And like, you know, this whole thing of like working hard, oh, work hard. I was like, yeah, that's a white person thing to maintain the status quo, to maintain the white supremacy and stuff. And I was like, you know, I was a communist. I was like, no, just destroy the system. You don't have to work hard. The system's corrupt. But, you know, but my grandpa's like, yeah, just work hard. But then I looked at the evidence and I was like, well, look in the Bible. It has the Gentiles doing all the hard work, and the Jews don't have to. And it says like, you know, the Jews will make the Gentiles their footstool. And I was like, that's what Jesus did. You know, when Jesus converted them to Christianity, it made them a footstool, and it made them give the Jews back Israel. And I was like, it was just a trick. So I wanted to destroy Christianity because I saw Christianity as dividing and maintaining white supremacy. So I tried to subvert it and be like, no, Christianity was communism. It was just a fake. It was just a trick to convert, you know, as it says, like the Gentile was looking at the cross and he's like, oh, this must be the Son of God. But then I was pointing out how in the stories, like the Roman, or the guy Jesus crosses the sea, and he makes the demons go out of legion into the pigs, and then pigs are swallowed by water, and the Jews saw the Romans as pigs. So I was like, yes, Jesus, you know, and legion represents the Roman legion. So the pigs being swallowed by water represents the Roman legions being swallowed by water. So I was like, yes, this is an allegory. Jesus destroyed the Romans. He destroyed the Roman army by converting them to Christianity. As that Roman commander says, like, oh, he's the Son of God. That converted them and it destroyed them. And I was like, and if you look, and I tried to subvert everything, and like, you know, the Jews in the Bible don't believe. But if you look every time, the Gentiles do believe. And they work hard and they're carrying the water and they believe and stuff. But then they end up always being destroyed. Like the Ninevites, they believe, but then they're destroyed. The Pharaoh, he believes in God. He says he believes, but then he's destroyed. He's swallowed by the water. You know, and the Israelites who don't believe and don't have perception, they don't believe, they always end up being saved. So I was like, yeah, because non-belief and non-conformity is closer to the flow. And that's what the Bible is trying to say. And so, you know, the Gentiles, like Solomon has the Gentiles, they believe and they're working hard and stuff, but then they end up being destroyed. Like the Philistines, who apparently were Indo-European. I was like, yeah, they're Indo-European. They're the white people. They're the evil ones. And then they believe and they take the ark, but then the ark destroys their God, and then they're destroyed. But the Israelites are saved because they believe in the God of Israel, but then they're destroyed. But the Israelites don't believe, but then they're saved. So I'm like, yeah, because belief is not the flow. Belief is conformity, and it's not the flow. Because in the flow, you transcend conformity, you transcend belief. So it was kind of like almost like Gnostic way of looking at it, but I was trying to subvert everything, and I was anti-white communist. So that's the way I wanted to see it. So I'm like, my grandpa's like, oh yeah, work hard. So I was like, okay, if you white people want to work so hard, why don't you just be the slaves? Why don't you be the slaves of the black people? Be the slaves to the Jews and stuff. And I wanted the white people to be, you know, basically destroyed because I saw them as evil, right? And I saw my grandpa as evil. He's not talking, you know, he's having my dad not talk to me. I'm not allowed to talk about the past, you know? And I was just like, you know, I thought he was a victim blamer. And I was like, he's just a white supremacist Nazi. So like I said, in 2020, I became a communist leftist again. And that's the way I was looking at things. And I was anti-white because I was trying to talk to my mom and dad. I wanted to see them. I wanted to talk to them. But they're not talking to me. They're, you know, and I was upset about the whole, like, oh, no talking about the past thing. And I thought that my mom and dad's whole no talking about the past was like when the black people, when white people say, like, to the black people, don't talk about the past. And I thought it was just a white supremacy thing. And yeah, like I said, my mom and dad hadn't even really talked to me since high school. So it was just stupid. I thought that my grandpa was to blame for it because my grandpa's stupid ideologies, he says they misinterpreted it, but no. So I was like, and then my grandpa wasn't talking to me at this time. So I was just like, yeah, so I became an anti-white communist again. And I was going against my grandpa's, what I thought was his right wing, you know, work hard and type of thing. So, yeah, so this is 2020. So I was back into that, you know, communist leftist. And like my grandpa's like, well, you know, when people depend on other people, then if you depend on someone, then the people you depend on resent you, and you resent them because you don't want to be dependent on people. But then I was reading that book, that audio book, that was saying like, no, welfare is actually good for people, and the people, it doesn't enable people, and it actually does help people. Because my grandpa would be like, well, if you just give money to people, you know, they first have to serve apprenticeship to money. If they don't, then they're going to misuse the money. They're going to use it for drugs and sex. But then this book was saying, no, the evidence shows they don't just use it for drug and sex. They use it for clothes. They use it for food. And I'm like, yeah, grandpa, you're just a white supremacist. But again, I wanted the white people to give their money because I wanted them to mix, and I wanted to destroy the white people because I saw the white people as evil. this is the way I was in 2020 when I became a communist again. Remember, I went from being my whole life a communist leftist. 2014, I became a right-wing nationalist pro-white. Then 2015, I became communist again. 2016, I became nationalist pro-white again. But then in 2020, I became a communist leftist again. And because I was rebelling against my grandpa, I thought I was sick of his right-wing stupid stuff. And he wasn't talking to me, he wasn't teaching me. But then my grandpa started teaching me again. But like I said, in my Based on True Story book in 2020, it was very much like a leftist communist manifesto. And like one thing I would write was like, I was like, yeah, you know, Fox News people, they're actually, you know, just white supremacists, and, you know, and they're actually just ball worshipers. So, you know, when I was a right-wing nationalist, I wanted to think that the ball worshipers are people who wanted race mixing. And because remember, the ball worshipers, they have sex with the Israelites, and then Zimri, he kills the Israelite man who's having sex with the Midianite woman, and the Midianites are ball worshipers, and so he kills them, and it says that, you know, it says that God made Zimri a priest after that, although it's apparently like there's a break in the writing after that, because the idea was God doesn't like violence or whatever, but that's according to some rabbis. But you know, when I was a communist, I wanted to just believe, yeah, well, the reason why that, you know, they're against race mixing is because it's genetic Darwinism, man. And religion is just a subterfuge for genetic Darwinism. And by being against race mixing and stuff, you maintain the genes of your tribe and stuff. But then at this time, when I was a communist leftist, but you know, when I was a communist, so I wanted to believe that, but I wanted to destroy religion because I thought that Christianity and I thought that these religions just maintain division. And I just wanted to say it's just Darwinism, get rid of religion and let's just all mix. And once we all mix, then it'll get rid of the Darwinian, you know, the Darwinism, the separation of people, because I thought that religion was just built around Darwinism, really. The reason why, you know, why Irish or Catholics and the English or Protestants, I thought, was just because they wanted to separate and they wanted to maintain their genes. But only if you mix them will they stop making different religions, right? So that's what I wanted. I wanted everybody to mix and create a communist utopia, right? But then, you know, at this time, and then when I became a right-winger, I wanted to be like, well, actually, you know, I was for religion, and I was against race mixing. And I thought that race mixing, you know, brought about negative things. So I was pro-religion. And then, because I wanted division. But then when I became a leftist communist again, I was against it. So I was like against the Fox News people. And I was like, you know, Baal worship is actually, you know, Baal was a rain god, a fertility god. I wrote this in my Based on True Story book. It's like, he's a rain god, he's a fertility god. And rain and fertility, that's about the ego. You know, trying to save the self by creating fertility, and also, you know, fertility with the humans. It's about trying to save and protect and promote the self. But, you know, so the Baal worshippers are like the Fox News people. And I was like, the Fox News people are really just white supremacists. And they just want to make women not have abortions and make women, you know, into baby makers so that they can maintain the white race. And they're really, that's what the Baal worshippers are. So again, I made the Baal worship into something that's white supremacist, that's like right wing. And I tried to like say, you know, so again, I was like, you know, the Bible's actually communist. The Bible's actually anti-white. That's what I wanted to believe, because again, I wanted race mixing and I wanted to destroy the white people because I thought the white people were evil. And I was looking at my grandpa and my dad as evidence, because they wouldn't talk to me. I thought they were treating me bad. And another thing was they didn't understand the quadrant model. And I remember rabbis said that white people couldn't understand that Hashem controls everything. And I was like, see, my grandpa's proof of this. My grandpa's like, everything is energy. And that's what the rabbi said that white people, that Germans do. They believe like everything's energy, but they don't believe in gematria. They don't believe in the, you know, the stuff about the you know, that Hashem controls things in a supernatural way. And that's the way my grandpa was. My grandpa was very like new age, but he was very rationalistic. Like, oh, well, God is energy. And no, that's crazy to think that, you know, he didn't understand Plato and that this world's a reflection of the world of forms, and my idea that the quadrant was the ultimate form that this reality was a reflection of, the fourfold pattern. But my grandpa's like, that's crazy. That, you know, the world's way more complex than that. That's crazy. That seems like magical thinking. You know, my grandpa didn't believe in a God. He believed that God was energy. So he didn't believe in any of that supernatural stuff. So again, like I was like, my grandpa doesn't understand, and that was more impetus for me to be like, yeah, white people just don't understand. And I would tell a lot of white people about the quadrant model, and a lot of them didn't believe it. But I would tell some black people or some Jews, and they seemed to believe it more. So I was like, this is more proof. I should mix the white people because the white people are evil. They're stupid. And they're, so I was just like, yeah. So again, I saw myself as Jewish, and I saw the white people as the problem, and I wanted to mix them, and I wanted to beat them. But at the same time though, like, I didn't quite it was kind of like a subconscious motivation, right? But at the same time, there was a lot that I needed to learn from my grandpa, but I wanted to learn more. But anyways, so I went back to being a leftist, communist, anti-white. But then my grandpa started teaching me again, and I'll get into that. What happened? The big reason was because my grandma wanted my grandpa to teach me. So my grandma kind of influenced my grandpa to teach me, and that's the ironic thing because my grandpa's always like, "You can't influence people, you can't change people." But my grandpa influenced him and changed him, right? But so again, I always thought he was just a white supremacist, and it's like, you can't influence people, you can't change people. Yeah, that's easy to say when like you want to maintain the status quo, and you want to be like, you can't change people, you can't change this, so we're going to continue to mistreat you and not talk to you and stuff. But then my grandma influenced my grandpa to start teaching me again. So then my grandpa started teaching me again. And I wanted to learn more because I wanted to understand the flow, and I didn't quite understand it yet. And at this point, when I was a communist leftist, I thought that I was teaching the flow. Like I didn't really understand it yet. And I didn't really realize that I was exhibiting predator-prey consciousness toward white people, So I'll continue on in a minute.